we're talking about planning, and you were talking about how, how much of an awesome thing it is when these people are fired up and they're when you do these camps and all this. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with our podcast is just how to plan. Really, like what does that mean to plan? Because when we say planning, what do you think people comes to mind when people think about planning? What's some things you think about?
Maybe like planning their vacations, planning out their retirement.
Yeah, don't you? Do you ever play? Do you ever do the? You ride by and you see the how much of a lottery? Do they have a lottery in Texas?
Oh yeah.
So they don't have they have it here now in Mississippi. Okay. They'll be really glad once they get like the lottery line at the gas station.
Oh, that's right.
Where you don't have to wait in line for kind of like, give me some of these, give me some. I just really want to take my code.
Yeah, because you got to wait a long time.
Yeah, you ride by, you see the sign that says like $400 million on it. You're thinking, what would I do with $400 million?
Let's plan that out.
Let's plan that out, right? That's the fun of the plan out, right? And like I just want to be the guy that brings that. I want that big check and try to put it through the drive-through. At the bank, you're like, sir, that check doesn't fit. Like, oh, it's the house is $400 million. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
It was $400 million when I thought it was a paycheck. It's silly of me to do that.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about planning, that's some of the things they do, right? And really, oftentimes, don't we equate planning as dreaming? Isn't that kind of what they do? Is they just think about dreaming, right? And so, like you mentioned, your retirement, right? So, what when you think about that, what do you think people normally say when they think about their retirement? Like, I'm going to do what? I'm going to get me a motorhome or whatever.
I'm going to travel. Or some people are going to do missions, right?
Yeah,
Or take on a different job, a second career.
That's right, right. A transition time, right? But what we're talking about is how do we plan as a church?
Y'all give me a sound check with your comments again. Y'all mind. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And so that's what we're talking about now is we're planning. It's really easy for us to look around and see what's wrong with everybody else. Mm-hmm. I mean, as a matter of fact, that is something I have an avid talent at. Did you know that?
I'm pretty good at it.
I'm pretty good at like seeing what's wrong with everybody.
You're not as good as I am.
But thanks, Gary. Here's the blessing is that Romans 15:4. We talked about this a lot, right? What's everything's written for time, or written for our learning that we. Christians, that's who he's writing to, right?
Yeah.
Through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So we don't know what God's going to do, right? I mean, I just don't know what God's going to do. There are certain things he's promised us, right? He's coming back. He's going to save the faithful. He's got promises that he's done, but we can rest on what he has done, right? And so we can look backwards. And so then it's up to us now to plan, right? I mean, it's up to us to look at my family dynamic. Look at my marriage dynamic. Look at my congregation's dynamic. And there's no one size fits all, right? Do you get people that, what were you telling me about the legacy camp that you were worried that if it came east that it wouldn't kind of have that same feel?
Yeah, well, we were talking about this because we've talked about it for years, duplicating it different places. And Joe Wells, our friend Joe, has been talking about, look, we need to think bigger than just Oklahoma, right, in this region, right? And so, but then you have that fear of, well, what if it doesn't have the same spirit to it? Mm-hmm. Because that's what we want. We've built something here that has a spirit where we're accepting of where families are beginning. Mm-hmm. Some of them are coming for the first time to check this thing out. And what I loved about the camp that we met at was hearing about all the different, usually it's dads, all the different dads that are coming, and husbands that were drugged there. Mm-hmm. They really didn't want to go and spend their weekend doing that.
But they need to be there.
But then they left going, we'll never miss that.
Amen. Yeah,
we're going back. As a matter of fact, we've got a family that's coming to ours, right, from Tennessee.
Wow.
From Knoxville. That's going to drive all the way to ours.
Because
the original. Because yours was canceled.
Yeah.
Right? But Lord willing, it'll be next year. So.
Yeah, so they're going to drive to Oklahoma.
That's right.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
and that's the thing, is that it's always, like you're saying, the challenge. Like, so this thing worked so awesome, where you guys are, because it's ballooned to what? Y'all have 300 or 400 people at it now, right?
We have close to 400.
Yeah, and so you're worried that because when you make a plan, you're catering the plan to your need. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to just hand somebody your plan, right, and say, now you go, and you do this thing, and then in the end, it's going to look like what we did over here. And so people, it's the challenge in us is the challenge for us as Christians, just like how much planning is required in the Great Commission. Go. right? There's no, like, methodology in there. I mean, this is a tool of going now, right? Even though I like to take a hammer to it about 5 minutes ago, right? This is a tool of going, and so, well, we got a plan. So let's talk about planning today. Can we talk about it?
Absolutely.
So
Sounds good.
when you think about planning, Bob, from your family, what do you think about?
As far as my family goes?
Yeah, like from a family dynamic. What do you think things that we should be thinking about from a family dynamic?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so blessed. And just to tell you a little bit about me, Steve, is I asked my parents a couple of years ago before I preached a sermon. I said, "How far back can we trace Christianity, in our family?"
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad, he can trace it all the way back to it's about 6 generations in the church.
Amen.
And so there was my grandmother's grandfathers. I guess it'd have been my double great. I don't know.
Just however you said that.
He a long time ago.
Yeah.
He and David Lipscomb would debate with others on his front porch, in Tennessee, and so it's pretty cool. But my great grandfather, he wrote a book called The Way of Salvation, and it was published by the Gospel Advocate in, I think, in 1895. Mm-hmm. And so I hope they'll put that back into publication at some point. But it's neat that that you can trace those things. And so the Lord made this plan for multi-generational faithfulness.
That's right.
And he made that plan for fathers to lead in their homes. And so when you really said that about dads, they may be drugged there. And listen, I mean, I'm laying flooring in my house right now, in the evenings. And so, at 11 o'clock at night, you're trying to get finished laying flooring and you're hurting or whatever. And so dads get these mindsets where I've got all this going on and we gotta go away with this whole weekend, something that she planned or whatever. And it costs money too. And I got to check my food plots, or I got to watch a sport game, or whatever it may be. And so to hear that men are, they leave there and it's like we're never going to miss it again. I mean, we really need that church. So that's what I think about is multi-generational faithfulness, and not just, I don't want to just get my kids to heaven, but I want them to get their kids and teach their kids to get others to heaven.
That's right. Amen.
Isn't it a challenge? I mean, that in and of itself is like, now my family dynamic is different than yours, and different than yours. Mm-hmm. And so, what is it going to look like for us? And so that's why we've got to approach this thing. And I don't mean that we boil Christianity out to some systematic, stylized version to where it's got to be, our little trivia sheet pages or whatever. But we've got to go about it with a way, right?
Right.
I mean, I can't just hope that my kid, like I can want that. Like we talked about, like I can ride by and I can see that sign for $400 million, and then I can start dreaming, right? I can dream that my kids are going to be faithful. I can dream that my grandkids are going to be faithful. But how am I getting there?
That's right.
I mean, isn't the Bible? I think about the biblical narrative, and you see the ebbs and flows of Israel, for example, and it always goes back to the leadership.
Mm-hmm. Every time.
That's right.
Every time it goes back. And so you can use Israel as this model of the home, right?
Right.
So as their leadership falls off the wagon, what happens? Everybody. And each time they try to bring it back, look at how much more difficult. Look at how much harder it is when they have to try to come back from this, whether it's Hezekiah or Josiah. We found this book. We found this book here. And so, you think about how hard it is to come back. And so, there's always this idea that we can wait. That we can, I'll put it off another day. I'll do this, I'll do that. And so,
but the longer you wait, look at the Israelites again. The longer you wait, the worse it gets, right?
That's right.
Josiah goes, look at this book. Or the servant says, look at this book. And he starts reading this book and brings everybody, call everybody in.
Yeah.
Right? Bring everybody in because we got to read this now.
Yes.
But what did they have to do after that? They had to go and tear everything down.
That's right.
How long did that take?
Oh, man.
They had to go tear everything down that his father, his father's father, right, had set up with the Asherah poles and Baal and all of this worldly mess, right? I mean, they weren't even using anything that God had given them
That's right.
anymore.
Yeah, they're trashing the temple.
Yeah.
And I just can't even imagine that, right?
They're trashing God.
They're trashing
They're
God.
throwing him away.
And so, as a father and as a parent and as a member of the church, we got a plan.
That's right.
And so let's talk about some ways, some areas that we need to plan in, right, as a church, because we're going to talk about 4 of those areas this weekend. Tonight we're going to talk about my marriage. So let's talk about how I can plan in my marriage, because I know that I don't think there's nobody that can't look at their, at least I hope, nobody that can't look at their marriage and say, you know what?
Oh, mine's perfect. Yeah, right.
When you get to that point, you really need to start pumping the brakes.
That's right.
Right.
And you talked about Israel, and really and truly, it started with Solomon and his foreign wives. When you look at 1 Kings 11, in verse 4, for it was so when Solomon was old that his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. And so it all began. Well, you could actually kind of go back to David some and kind of his lack of fatherhood and that type of thing. But Solomon right here is where the kingdom's fixing to get split. Mm-hmm. And it's because his wives, he took these foreign wives and they turned his heart away from God.
That's right.
And so the marriage it's so important. And you look at, this marriage affected the family, and then the family affecting the whole kingdom.
Yeah, sure. And don't you ever
for generations?
Forever.
Yeah.
So you figure after this point, the northern 10 tribes are carried off. Mm-hmm. Essentially, from this point, you're going to have Jeroboam, Dan, and Bethel-Kaz. And, he even knows that if they go back to Jerusalem, they can pull their hearts away from you. But Israel will never have a faithful king. They may have some that were, maybe leaners. You may get a point in horseshoes with them, maybe.
Yeah.
But they're
but
never,
not to be considered righteous.
Yeah, nobody that's going to be a faithful king.
That's right.
So, ultimately, this is the end of every tribe except for Judah and Benjamin. Yeah, that's it. And whatever Levites that are scattered around. Yeah. And so, don't you think that sometimes, I think about when I'm planning for marriage, one of the things I got to think about is, I got to plan who I'm going to marry. Mm-hmm. First of all, don't you think so?
Yeah, we're in that season now, because I view things in seasons, right? You guys are in a season, we're in a season, your family's in a season. We're not in your season, right? We've already done the little children stuff, right? Mm-hmm. We're in that season of getting our kids through college, looking for that spouse season. But we started, the thing that makes this season sweet for us is that we started it when they were born.
Right.
Whispering into their ear and praying into their ear that God has someone for you. Mm-hmm. Let's go look, and we're going to help you look for them, not stick you into the worldly dating system. Right? And we don't, by the way, we don't call it anything. The Bible doesn't necessarily call it anything. We just call it, we're going to look for a Christian, a faithful Christian spouse, not just someone who has been baptized, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? But someone who is, that's right, someone who is dedicated to the Lord, serving the Lord. They know where they're going. They know where they've been. They know where they're going. Right? That's how Jesus could serve and wash the disciples' feet, John 13. He knew where he'd come from, and he knew where he was going. And that put the security in his life. Right? We want our children to marry someone that knows where they come from, and they know where they're going.
Amen.
Right?
Yeah, that's gold right there.
And it's such a, I think about this, you think about guys like me that have a face for radio, my draft stock goes up in the church, man. You figure if we teach our daughters, the most important thing you can do is go to heaven. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing you can do.
That's right.
Then all of a sudden, I'm not saying there's not some good looking guys out in the church, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
But your draft stock, my draft stock all of a sudden goes up, right? Because, what you want your daughters to be is looking in the church for people that are going to get them to heaven. That's right. So they're going to change. They're not going to, because as long as we let the world dictate what our marriage looks like, what it's supposed to be like, we're going to continue to look like the world. And I saw this guy the other day, we were talking, it was a brother in the church, and he was talking about how the church and the world are kind of in these two spheres, right? And then as the world's over here, and as the church tries to keep connected with the world, it has to keep migrating with it. Well, eventually, at some point, the church is going to be right in the same spot that the world was before.
Right.
And so, we just got to stand and we're going to plan, period, that we're going to marry somebody that's going to get me to heaven.
That's right.
There's just no way about it. And how many people have you seen that have thought they could really right that ship? You ever see this? Like, no, he's a good guy. Very few people I know that can do this. You know what I'm saying?
No.
That like, I'm going to marry somebody who's going to turn out from now. I'm not saying there's not some true success stories out there, because there are.
There's exceptions, sure.
But, certainly, you want to do the best that you can do.
Yeah, if you look at, I've heard this brought up before too, but if you actually take two true biblical Christians, I don't mean wearing the name, but they're Christians. You can put two Christians together, even if somebody had a marriage that was arranged, and you put two Christians together, if Christ is first, they could make it happen.
That's right.
But it's certainly there are a lot more. There's a lot higher success rate if you find that Christian, and then there's things that you have in common, and those type of things. And so that's But I teach all the girls at church camp, when I can get them off to the side or whatever. I sit down at a table with 2 or 3 of them or whatever. I tell them, say, don't date them skinny boys. and I said, because there's all kinds of girls looking at them skinny boys. I said, I'm telling you, you find one of them boys right over there who's after Christ, I'm telling you, and you give him some attention, one day, whatever.
He's coming home every day from Sunday.
That's right. That's right. So, but no, all joking aside, that's the whole thing is when I teach kids that I just use just a little simple pyramid or triangle diagram, and then when you start looking to the right or to the left for your spouse, you're going to find what the world's got to offer. But when you start pursuing God, then you're going to get closer together.
That's
and
right.
So, as husbands and wives, if I need to forgive more, well, I need to pursue God more. And if my spouse has hurt me bad, then I need to be pursuing God. If my spouse has let me down, because they're going to, you need to pursue God. And when I can look at them through the eyes of Jesus, it changes everything, because it changes the way that I look at if I can look at them the way God sees me. Oh, okay, I can have more compassion.
So now we're married, right? Now what do we do? Right? We still got a plan.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it with the plan, and we've got to still plan when we're married. So, now we've got these awesome Christian wife or husband, and we just can't let it hit autopilot. Like you said, you're in a different season, right? Jessica and I talk about this, and
You mean you don't hit autopilot?
yeah, we do.
You don't just let it go?
You generally at nighttime about 11:30, 11:30 and more.
Yeah, but you're exactly right. Some people think, well, I've already obtained. I'm already there.
Yeah, but the reason why you say seasons is because you think about this, like growing up, like there was a season that we absolutely had to do everything. There was a season, like I don't even know the science behind this, but you always put your potatoes in the ground before St. Patty's Day. Always, right? And so that was a season that you had to do that in. And so now we're in a season, Jessica and I are, that in 10 years, right, of us in 10 years, our last one would just be ready to inch out the door. He'll be 7 in just a few weeks, right? And so we're looking at 10 years. Aiden will be in his early 20s, and so we're going to be in a different season in life. And so what we're trying to do now, we didn't think about this in the beginning. Is like we've got to plan what we're going to look at. I said, listen, I am so glad that I've got a good wife. Okay, I'm just going to tell you.
Me too.
But we try to plan. And so I'm not trying to say use us as a model, right? because we got problems. But I say that.
Go ahead, I'll open up.
Yeah. Please help me. I don't mean like we got problems.
Right, we know.
But we've got.
You're real, Chris.
We've got a family dynamic that's different. I'm blessed to have Jessica as a wife. She's awesome. And she wants to work on these things together. But we realize in 10 years, like right now, every morning, like it's homeschooling, it's getting the boys up, it's getting them fed. Liam's up at 6 o'clock in the morning eating with me. Aiden's up an hour later, gone fishing at the pond. Ryan, but we got all these boys that take our time throughout the day because we want them to go to heaven.
Yeah.
But in 10 years, it's going to be back to Jessica and I again. And so we don't want to lose this bond and relationship.
So let's talk about that.
All right?
So, in the beginning, did God create husband and wife relationship or father-mother relationship first?
Yeah, great point.
So husband and wife is first, right?
Amen.
Now watch, we got to get this right. We have to parent out of the husband and wife relationship. I want to talk about this tonight
Okay, we don't
with our people. No, it's okay. It needs to be said again
Okay.
because some people, for the first time, it shocks them. Because when they have a child, that child comes between mom and dad, and rightfully so. Even in our pew, right? They sit between us. We have to trap them in,
Right.
right? So they'll get out.
Tether them.
But it's kind of, that's sort of a word picture for, that's the way it stays until they're gone, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Right? At some point very soon, after you're done training them here, is they need to sit over there or over here. Because in other words, the idea would be, we've got to parent from the husband and wife relationship. They have to see that we are the team, and you don't play us against each other. There's none of that, because it happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yes.
So when that time comes that those boys in 10 years are done, you don't even know her anymore.
Yeah, I know.
Because they've been the center of your lives.
They've been the article of worship.
That's right. And that marriage needs to be Christ Jesus, but that marriage needs to be the center of their lives so they can see what a marriage looks like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what greater example is there than you to show them what a marriage looks like?
And to show them what Christ.
Well, that's true.
And that's what Paul said, looking at, he's like, I'm telling you this, but I'm telling you about Christ in the church, and so that's the greatest example.
And that's why he can use that.
That's right.
I mean, because no matter what kind of, like, I had a guy that he was the little kiosk at Sam's, that sells your cell phones, right?
Yeah.
So I meet him, walk up to him, and just happen upon him, set up a Bible study with him, right? And end up baptizing him. Okay? So he's at my house one day, and he's literally looking at my refrigerator, and I'm sure my refrigerator's like yours. It's got everybody's families on it. My family, Bob's family, people.
Ours?
People, we do. But don't look. Jessica, I need you to do something real quick.
I'll make sure. But they're food. But Steve's wife goes to the restaurant.
Start a fire. But like he walks up to my refrigerator and he looks at it, and I won't say his name. I doubt he's listening, but I won't say his name. But he looks at the refrigerator and he says, I used to hate families like this. And I said, well, why? He said, well, I watched my daddy kill my mama. And so he can look at that, right? And there's nothing about those pictures that told somebody's story, right? They're just this, and it may have been the 48th take they took to get that smiley picture where somebody's not picking their nose or whatever. But that picture paints that picture of this stable environment. Yeah. And so that's why Paul in Ephesians 5, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, like no matter how bad it looks, from where you're at, you still know a good one when you see it.
That's right.
And so that's why the world needs examples, right? They need to see that we can still do this thing. That we can yes, we make mistakes. Yes, we have, our dynamics are different in each one of our families, and we have to parent with purpose from a different perspective, everybody. But we're going to do it this way. We're going to have this model so that our kids can see that, listen, this is not about you, right? This time requires some of our time.
Right.
That's what you're getting. You're getting some of our time right now, but you're not the focus here.
Otherwise, it turns into a family of manipulation, right? That those kids are manipulating the system, as it were, the family system, to get what they want, so that they stay first and not the marriage first. But see, if you reverse that, where the marriage is first and you're parenting from the husband and wife relationship, then it builds security in them. It builds a foundation. That's what they want ultimately. Right? We used to have this game where I would come home or whatever, or Stephanie would be cooking and I'd go in there and just grab her and hug her, and our youngest would always come and fight to get between us. But the game was we would never let her, right? We would never. And while that was a game, it's still sort of showing our children over and over and over again, right, that we are together in this, and you're not going to come between us in this. And they find safety and security. That's really what they want, even though they would love to be first. Yeah, that's right. Every time.
That's why they test boundaries.
Oh, and they're smart.
They just want to know how far they can go.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They want to know what really it looks like. That's why boundaries, the ones that they're testing, They're building them in their mind. Like
Yes.
that wall, I can run as hard as I want to, and even if I don't believe in gravity, jump off a building, right? You don't have to believe in it to make it work, right? And so our kids do that with boundaries. They build these things in their mind. They need these lines.
Yep.
She said, us, problems never.
Yeah. I like what Gary Bennett said. He said it's easier to pull someone off the table than to pull someone up.
Yeah.
And yeah. And talking about parenting with children and things, a friend of mine, I'll just call him that, he grew up in the church. Dad preached for 45 years, but the parents never fought in front of their children, and so they never argued in front of children. And so what they always, if they had a disagreement, they would take it to the bedroom, and so they would hash it out there and they come out. Well, this friend of mine, like the first 6 relationships, every time whenever he would get into a deep relationship with somebody, and there would be a problem, he would end the relationship. And the reason is because he never saw his parents problem solve. And he thought that they never argued. He thought that there was never a problem in their marriage. And so it's good. It's good for children sometimes to see their parents even make mistakes.
Yes.
And to see another parent
how to come back from it.
That's right. And how to love later and not hold
Man,
those
I was
things
really
against
hoping you were going to say, it's good to let your kids see you fight. And I was like, nailed it.
Oh, you got it.
We got it.
Yeah.
So that's a check mark.
I thought I heard your address come on the police account.
I was handing out coffee. That's what it was. That's what it was. I was sending you to the cops.
Right.
We just so anytime you hear that, it's what's going on. We do it a lot.
Yeah.
Being a blessing.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about marriage a little bit. So then how do I plan for my family? Right. So that's a different dynamic then, because my marriage is something that is these things that is. There's really only 2 divine institutions, right? The marriage and the church. And so with that, there's kind of the big bubble is the marriage, and then all these, because you don't have to have kids, right, to go to heaven. You don't have. There's a lot of things you don't have to do in order to go to heaven, right? But now that you're blessed, you got these arrows in your quiver, right? So how then do we plan? And give us some pointers on planning for our family then, whatever that means.
So absolutely, to me, I think continuing to keep an eternal perspective on everything.
What do you mean by that?
We're talking about how are we going to educate these children? We got it?
Yeah, keep going.
How are we going to educate these children?
Right.
We need an eternal perspective on every single aspect within the family when it comes to raising our children. And so everything we do needs to come from the Word of God. It needs to be Christ-centered. It needs to be eternally centered.
So we need to really point out that whole Leviticus 22 with the stoning of the kids. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
We just need to always make sure that's on the table.
Yeah, that's right.
Say this, boy.
And it isn't. So I am the first generation of Americans that is going to come up now where they were told not to spank your kids. Mm-hmm. This is a 40-year-old thing now, right? So don't. It's just bad to spank your kids. It's just bad to give your kids discipline. Well, you know what? 40 years later, how's that turned out for us? Right. Can we not see that now? Now we're trying to point another finger of blame. That's what we're trying to do. And so, the hard part about it is so there's nothing wrong with us, right? God made us. There's literally nothing wrong with us. It's just our decisions that we need help with, isn't it? And we make it a practice in our house to never say bad boy. We can say bad decision because we want them to always think about this is, if I say, like if your boss comes to you, he's like, you messed this thing up. What's wrong with you? Are you stupid? And you say, well, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. What else can he say?
Disarm them.
You can't fix it. But your kids, right? And so, you don't say, well, why are you doing this? Are you tired? Why are you doing this? Don't get, it's your decision. I got you here.
That's right.
And so we just decided that we want to instill in our kids, it's the decision-making process. We want them to understand, because the decision is what gets you into Christ. A decision is what will determine every little path that you'll segue in life. But that implies that you got a plan. You got to think about what it's going to do. And there's not a 6-year-old really. Can he think 10 years down the road? No, he can't. But if he does something wrong, I was asking, was that a good decision or a bad decision? Because I'm just trying to instill that decision making in their mind now.
Yeah, that's right. We have a young family that every couple of years they'll come to our house. They actually live in another country. They'll come to our house with a notebook of questions because they're entering different seasons. Their kids are little right now, but it was kind of like we're having children now, right? And then now they're a little older, and what are we going to do with these children now that we're having problems with some discipline areas here, and we're educating here, and this one's older than this one, and so they'll come and they'll just sit with us. It's been a little while since they've done this, but they'll just sit with us with all of these questions. And I'm not saying we have all the answers, but I am saying that we're in a different season of life, and that we've gone through a lot of this stuff, and the reason that things have turned out the way that they have is because that idea of train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, well, what is that way? What is the way?
That's
right?
Perfect.
And so what we want to do is have a plan. We know certain things are coming.
That's right.
Down the pike with these kids,
That's
right?
right?
We know that there's going to be an age in which they're going to start. This little boy who's so sweet at this point is going to start challenging his mama.
Yes.
What's the plan for that?
Mm-hmm.
What's the plan when they, this young lady goes, so and so texted me the other day because they don't talk face to face because a lot of kids don't know how. Texted me the other day and wants to date me. What's your plan for that? Right? Don't act surprised that's going to come up. What is your plan for dating? Right? Well, we have a card. Right? My girls have a card. And my boy has a card, and on top of that card, it's 13 things for my boy. 13 things she must be to marry me.
Oh, wow.
Right? Mm-hmm. Same with them. 13 things that he must be. Now, there's other things, obviously. But these are 13 major things from our perspective. Well, they've had that for years. Way before the concept of dating was, entered into their head. And so, to me, that's that doing stuff, planning on purpose, being diligent about, we know these things are coming, why aren't we ready for them, right? Well, it takes putting people in our life to get ready for those. Who do you have in your life? Who do you have in your life that you can sit down and go, how did you guys do this? Because I love how your children turned out.
Ain't that a blessing in the church?
That's what it's supposed to be.
I mean, that's the biblical model,
yes,
right? Older women teach the younger women.
That's it,
older
Titus
men.
2.
Yeah, I mean, that's just this Titus 2, and Paul is writing at the Titus. He's been on the island for 2 years of Crete. He says, appoint elders and remind them of these things. 2 years. Right. The church has been there, right?
Right.
And so now, we're talking about that in our home, right? This isn't a blessing that the church is. I'm just so thankful for, Acts 18, we looked at our conversions, with Aquila and Priscilla, how they kind of had Barnabas and hey, we have a chat over here. I am so thankful for the people who have had those chats with me.
That's right.
Aren't you?
That's right. Amen. Mentors, right?
Yes.
That's discipleship. It's biblical discipleship. Having the people in your life that you go, you know what? Here's what we're struggling with now.
That's right.
What do you think about this? Yeah. Right?
Here's a verse that goes right with that. With Proverbs 15:22. And the New King James Version says, without counsel, plans go awry. But in the multitude of counselors, they're established. You just think about to me, there's no better place to go than to the church. And when you've seen, I mean, that is certainly a stepping stone, and it's a qualification for an elder. Mm-hmm. For the way that he's conducted his family, for him to be able to shepherd the church. And so when you have those great people who have done it, and that's why people are looking. I mean, I don't even know you, but the fact that you have people who are coming sitting on your couch with a notebook, going, "Hey, what do we do now?" They're seeing how you and your wife have did things, and what a blessing that is. And we need families in the church that are doing that are mentoring others, and they're taking others into their home and not only just counsel, but have them over for meals and building those relationships.
But that's the backwards and forward plan.
Yes.
Like I'm planning forward, right? And you can help me plan backwards.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. And so that you figure that at 40, now is the first time I'm standing with my hand on 2 generations. That's right. Right? I've got the guys that are just ready to go into college. I can say, hey, let me tell you these things. And I got the guys that are 60 that I can hold their hands that their kids are gone and now they're inched out of the house, and they can come to me and say, hey, let me tell you, you're buying something now that you're not going to want to pay for later.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And because I want the plan. I know that I can hope all I want, but if I don't plan for my marriage and for my family, I'm just gonna make a mess of it.
Amen.
No matter how good I want to, I don't think that nobody really, I mean, I know some people like the drama with their mama, right? But most people just don't want that in their lives.
Right.
And so that's why it's important to plan.
It'll get you on Maury Povich, though.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I still got your episode DVR.
I
need to feel better about myself.
Well, we have grown from that episode.
Yeah.
The DNA test came back good, though.
So, you figure, you plan for your marriage, you plan for your family, but I can't deny that I'm the centerpiece of that whole thing, aren't I? And so I've got to plan for me.
Yeah, it starts with me.
And it's not that plans can go awry, can't they? Mm-hmm. I mean, how many people do you know? I mean, there's certainly, like some people come to my mind right now, and I don't even know if I want to say who it is, because I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I know there are good people in the church that have had horrific things happen to them.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, my grandmother lost her spouse at 40.
Mm.
My dad was 7 years old. And so what do you do then? Well, he was an elder in the church before he was 40. And that's crazy to think about, and it's in a church.
And he's still an elder.
Well, no, I'm saying my grandfather.
And you're steadily walking this table up.
I know. We're trying to keep it from going awry.
Yeah, we're just going to rock the wheel.
But my grandfather was an elder, and before he was 40, not my dad. And but he passed away at the age of 40. But the things that he built in his family with his wife, and fortunately my grandmother was just a rock solid Christian. Mm-hmm. But my dad didn't become a Christian until after that. But that's just an example. I mean, things happen. Good Christians pass away. Good Christians get cancer. Good Christians,
have life-changing events in there. I mean,
exactly.
You think about somebody that's been crippled. You think about somebody that all of a sudden they're going to have to serve the Lord from a new capacity. And so it's that. But I am still the centerpiece of the whole thing. So, I can depend, I'm so thankful for Jessica and her faithfulness and her diligence. I love when I come home and she's got 5 Bible questions for me. I just love that. But it's still I, right? I can't depend on Jessica to get me to heaven, right? I can't depend on my boys. I am the I in the whole equation. I am the centerpiece of the whole thing. Not that it depends on me, right? But I have got to work on myself first.
Yes.
Right. It's just like if somebody's drowning and I can't swim, the worst thing I can do is what?
Get in the water then.
Yeah, get in the water with them. And so I've got to plan. Huh?
2 people drown.
Yeah. Right. And so just who's first?
That's right. Which one goes first?
And so I've got to work on me.
Yeah.
And really, the thing about marriage and the thing about kids is that you have this unique ability to look and say, I just don't want my kids to do that. I don't want them to back talk. I don't want them to. You fill in the blank.
They're
right?
going to.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I want my marriage to look this way or whatever. I don't like when my wife does this, right? So how can we work on that? How can I get her to do that, right?
All her fault.
I don't like when my husband, but it's got to always be me. And so that I am the center of the whole thing.
Yes.
Not that I'm like I'm Mr. Important, right? But I have got to. That's what the parable of the 10 virgins was about.
Yeah, there's got to be self-reflection. And that's what I was talking about with that pyramid thing, is if I look at God first, then I've got to look at how whenever I take the Lord's Supper, I'm not examining my wife's life on Sunday morning, I'm examining mine. And so there's got to be that self-reflection. And so when I look at the cross to see my wife, then it changes everything.
That's right. So as we talk about looking inward, I really don't think that as men, we're going to go very far until we set doable goals.
What do you mean by that?
So,
you say men as humanity or men as the
men, us men, right? Women too, but we're talking about us.
Mhm.
I'm talking about me.
Mhm.
So if I want to lead my family, my wife to heaven, I want to lead my children to heaven, and I want to lead others we can be an example to others. And you're exactly right, Brother Chris. It has to start right here with what I'm doing on a daily basis, right here today. What am I doing today to make that happen? We talk about 10 years. Well, 10 years is great. We can dream about that and talk about that. But if you ain't doing the thing in the next 10 minutes that's going to get you to the 10 years, then what does it mean?
Nothing.
And so my dad, he always trained us, two of us boys in the family. He always trained us, look, the world will step out of the way and move out of the way for the man who knows where he's going, and it will help him get there. And the idea is you set goals for your life. Set goals for your life, and the world will actually, as the world figures out that you are headed somewhere, it'll help you get there. It'll move out of the way and help you get to that point.
What do you mean?
So I've always had goals
Mhm.
in life, and I think for me, and I'm not telling you can't go to heaven without doing this. I'm saying though that you can achieve a lot of things in a lot less time. You don't need the 10 years. If you set personal goals, personal standards for your life. So for example, when we have internships and I get a young man or even an older man. Older men don't even do this very often. To sit at my table in my office, then the one thing I'm going to train them to do is to set these goals for their life. Right? We're talking about short range goals, 0 to 12 months, and we're talking about 1 year to 5 year goals. Things that meet the criteria of MAPS, MAPS, right? Measurable. These are things that are measurable, things that are attainable, things that are personal, and things that are specific.
Chris, I'm using that as a sermon.
No, I already have.
No.
Okay.
I'm preaching Sunday.
No, actually I am.
Next
So,
Sunday.
so the idea would be, I'm going to put things on there, spiritual and physical, right? We're talking about, well, I can give you several examples probably.
Yeah, I mean,
I started,
guys are that way.
we think this way.
I'm going to go to the gym every single day.
Yep.
You know, or I'm going to make sure that my food plot is correct. I'm going to check my cameras or, you know, whatever it may be. Make sure my shotgun's clean, whatever. But go ahead.
Well, the reason I'm a reader now, because I was not a reader as a kid. I hated reading. I just wanted to be out playing ball and shooting guns and playing at the creek, right? Mm-hmm. That was my lifestyle. But the reason I became a reader was because I had that as a goal, to read every day. Mm-hmm. Because I think a leader is a reader. I think if you're really going to lead in the church and in your family, you got to be someone who's in that book right there and who's studying, not just reading, but studying that. That has to be a goal, right? The reason I married a beautiful Christian woman is because by the age of 12, I had that as one of my top goals, right? So when those things are written down, you're serious about it. A lot of guys, I'll say, what goals do you have? Well, I've got some things. Hang on a second. Right? They got some things that they've thought of. Exactly. And typically,
I drop the hat on something here. You're going to be blown away with it. Just give me 1 minute.
Hold on a second.
Give me one.
You know, no, but it's usually I saw this show or this video one time. Hang on a second. And I want to do that, right? Whatever that is. I want to shoot a buck. I want to be able to achieve this or jump out of an airplane, right, with a parachute on. Any stuff like that. But they're not serious.
Right.
That's just stuff that was really cool to them.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a cool thing.
But listen, what if you want to start fasting?
Yeah.
What if you want to start really studying the gospel according to John? And I don't mean read it. I mean, I want to know what the word means in that. I want to know what so those things though are achieved by the guy who sits down and gets serious about where he's going. And then when he does, and it's again physical things and spiritual things, right? And then when he does, this guy's living. Watch, he's living on purpose. He's not doing things by accident.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right? I can name things. It'll seem like I'm bragging if I do, so I won't. But I can name things that I'm an Eagle Scout.
Okay.
Right? Jumping out of an airplane by myself with a parachute on.
Why did you have to preface it by saying with a parachute on?
Well, because some people don't, and that's easy to they forget.
They don't get their story.
They go just as far, though.
That's a good question. But just, getting our children to the school that they're going to now. Mm-hmm. Getting to that point, right? Mm-hmm. Getting to that point with a vehicle and without debt and stuff like that. All of those things all of the things that I have in my life are because they were written down. And because I detailed them out and I put a timeline, they're measurable. I put a timeline to them. They were attainable. There's stuff that I knew I could actually achieve, right? And they were specific. They were personal. They were specific to us. And so I think if a guy really wants to get serious about getting himself to heaven and his children, there's so many things. To me, if you don't fill those blanks in with purposeful things, the world will fill them in for you.
So that's what you mean by the world will move out of the way.
Absolutely.
Because now all of a sudden, the whatever the world says.
Look, Chris, the 15-year-old boy who has this list of goals, spiritual and physical, and then the guy comes up and says, "Hey, come smoke this joint with me. Come do." Exactly, right? Let's go drinking tonight. Mm-hmm. Is he going to? No. See that? Because all of a sudden now, that doesn't equate with helping me get where I'm supposed to be going. Right? Because I know where I'm going.
Yeah, you think about Daniel, he purposed in his heart not to defile himself with the king's delicacies.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you can take me out of you can change my name, take me out of my country.
Do what you need to do.
Make me do whatever, but I'm not going to defile God.
Same with his friends. The reason they didn't need to go back and spend days and weeks discussing this and seeing what the outcome would be.
They already made it up.
They already made their decision.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And the same reason David ends up with Bathsheba.
Yeah. That's right.
Because you look at that account there, he had not purposed, right? In the days when the kings went out to battle, what's that? And you know that I know I pushed it that time.
There went. We're getting further.
You know that there's anywhere I've been where they do outdoor bathing or anything, there's a time, right? So what if David, it's not like they're just like, hey, it's 9 o'clock, I'm going to go take a bath.
Right.
Like, there's a bathing time, right? And so
he knew when she was going to be bad.
Yeah, and so we would have never ended up with Solomon, right? I mean, Bathsheba's his mama. We would have never ended up with Solomon. And so you think about it, like if isn't it easier to make decisions before it happens?
Yes.
It is so hard.
Yes.
So if I plan that I'm not going to smoke a dude, right? Or no matter how much that Budweiser King of Beers looks good on that can, I am not going to do that. I'm going to, no matter how much I want to do it, I've already made up my mind.
Your heart's already set.
Yes. My middle son, he's black and white, right? He is Mr. Black and White.
Sure.
And so he's so black, like boys do boy things, right? And he comes home one day and he's so opposed to the idea of drinking alcohol that they were throwing rocks at these bottles in the woods, right? And one of them busts, right? And it has some liquid in it. And it's like a double dude, one of these big glass beer bottles. And he's like, something got on my lip. You think I drink alcohol?
You're not going to hell, man.
He's just like, there's just a no and yes in this. We're in Sam's. And he's like, I know why they put them pictures on them alcohol bottles like that. I was like, why? He said, because they want me to drink it. They want me to drink that alcohol. But you're right? I mean, that's kind of a juvenile, attitude, like what I'm talking about. But if I make these decisions now and I set my mind that this thing is wrong, then it sure helps me.
Yeah.
Then I've got this plan, this purpose that I have. I don't have to worry about making decisions when I need to.
And again, I'm not saying you can't go to heaven without a goal list. What I'm saying though is that you're going to have a funner time getting there. I just think you're going to have a funner time. That's right. You're gonna be achieving things. Now, we can't forget this part. Doing God's will means accepting His no's. Mm-hmm. Right? Sure. It's accepting, I'm going to let Him take this wherever it needs to go, but it also means when He says no or stop or it's not going to happen, then I'm totally fine with that. And my spirit's totally fine with that.
That's what He told David.
That's exactly right.
2 Samuel 7, when David, he says, listen, Nathan, all this time the ark's been dwelling in tents. Let's make a house for it. Nathan's like, that's like a good idea.
Right.
That's a good, he's like that. That's, you know what? Well, I got this fancy cedar paneled house, sense, right? Yeah. Let's build a house. And God says, whoa.
Time out.
I'll tell you what I'll let you do. I'll let you stack up nails, right? I'll let you get some of the materials together, but you just can't do it. Your boy will do it, but you can't do it. And so there's a no, right? There's no's that come with it. Now Solomon, in Matthew 6, when Jesus uses the lilies of the field and all these kind of analogies there, he says Solomon in all his glories was arrayed like one of these. he attributes it then to Solomon. Solomon can do that, right? Solomon, he said yes to, but his daddy, he said no to.
Yeah.
And so both of them, it was a goal that David had. It was a righteous goal. It was a goal that ultimately came to fruition.
Right.
So it wasn't like he was doing something foolish, like, hey, let's set up another one in Bethel. Let's get one in the north, right? You know, no, he wasn't doing that. He's like, I know, we're going to do it right, cross all our eyes and our T's. No. So we got to be those kind of people that can understand the no's.
Yeah, that's right.
But back to your list, I mean, I think that's awesome. I want to get a copy of those.
Sure.
Those cards, that's awesome. And you know, we've already been going for an hour and 7 minutes. Of course, I know we had those hiccups in the start, but I want you guys just to kind of, as we close out, you know, I think about the church, and of course that's what we're hearing. That's what this podcast is all about. But of course, Unscripted was kind of born from us is that life doesn't necessarily have a script, but so we need to fill it with scripture. But when we look at the church, and I think that's the last thing that we're going to look at this weekend. And so we encourage everybody that this is kind of just we've circled the wagons, as Chris has said, with our church family with COVID standards and some of those things. Is a family weekend, family focused weekend, where our families are truly focused in on what they should be focused in on. Yeah. And of course, we've set those sights 10 years down the road, but as you said, you know, we need to focus on the 10-minute thing. But when we look at the church today, and we look at the numbers, and we're so blessed here to have a congregation that's growing. And we have a congregation that's, I feel like, has their sights focused. And Chris will just tell you, if he hadn't already, that we're just surrounded by so many awesome families and so many great people and Christians. Yeah. But when you look around the world, you know, the church isn't necessarily that strong. In fact, you know, you can go miles down the road or hours down the road, and you can see where maybe the church isn't as strong in some areas. And so, you know, I guess to close out with you two guys, what would be kind of if you had one suggestion or one thing to kind of reference people as far as planning, what should we be planning for as far as the church goes?
I'll let you take it first, Steve.
Okay.
I'm going to drop something big.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
I'm going to Google it. That's what I'm going to do.
Hang on just a second. Hold on. Training our boys to be leaders.
Amen. It starts with leadership.
And doing that full time. Not a hit and miss class. Timothy class every now and then. Full time, training them, instilling in them, sowing seeds into their hearts that they need to be leaders in the kingdom. Because we've got way too many men sitting back with their arms folded. There's a lot of men that think they're going to heaven, and they won't because of their pride. Their pride will keep them back from heaven.
Can I tell you something I tell my boys? They're the lazy people in here.
That's right.
I just want to make it easy for them.
That's right.
Not easy in the sense like it's an easy job, but I just want to make it as simple as I can make it. There'll be lazy people in here.
Yeah. If the church fails, it'll be because of the men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's God's plan, right? I think about that. It's almost complementary to what you say in that I want to create a vacuum. But what I mean by that is that I want to create this. So, you know, you can take two mirrors and put them together.
Yeah.
And they won't fall apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is zero atmospheric pressure. We say that space is a perfect vacuum, right? So you tear open, you see the space movies and stuff like that, where there's a hole breach or something, and, you know, something gets sucked out into space, somebody gets sucked out, it's because there's a vacuum, right? It's drawn through that hole. And so what I want to do in the church is I want to create a vacuum. If we can create a vacuum, we can create this way that we can draw people inexplicably, right? Whether it's through leadership, whether it's through influence, whether it's through pattern Christianity, whether it's through the way I serve, you know, all these things, I create this vacuum, right? So that I can create this force that is undeniable, right? You cannot get away from a vacuum. You walk by a vacuum and it pulls you. You have to purposefully pull away from a vacuum. And so if we can have guys that, you know, I use this term sometimes, white space, right? So you got all these qualifications that an elder is supposed to have, but there's so many things that aren't written there.
Sure.
right? And I'm not saying that we're going to supersede what the Spirit would outline in 1 Timothy 3 or Titus 1, but there's this model of this person there. This person, what he's done is you can look at this person and have confidence that you can follow him.
Yeah.
That he's got a vacuum behind him.
Yeah.
And so if we want the church to look that way in 10 years, we've got to have men, people that can stand up and move in that direction and say, we're going there.
Amen.
We're going to go there.
Yeah. Amen.
Man, Steve, I appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Brother Chris.
And we look
Honored
forward
to be with you both.
Absolutely. And you can tune in, check out our Kingston Woods Church of Christ's Facebook page as well as our YouTube channel. We'll be streaming Steve's lessons this weekend, and so
we may have to mix up the Facebook and the YouTube for the ladies session because we're going to
11 o'clock Saturday.
We just really want to create this organic kind of growth within too, and follow that biblical pattern, Titus 2. And so we're going to have 7 minutes of wisdom from our ladies and 7 minutes of wisdom from our men. So that may bust in half. We may have to put one on YouTube or one on Facebook. So,
and if for some reason you're catching this podcast at a later date, we're talking October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of 2020 right here. I want to leave everybody with this verse. Is the counsel of the Lord stands forever, and the plans of His heart to all generations. And so if you're going to make your plans with God, make them big, but make them about His plan.